Remote work, aka working from home, definitely brings a certain stigma, and that stigma can make it hard for you to decide whether you should allow your employees to work remotely. As a Catholic company, we've noticed that it's fairly uncommon for churches, schools, and dioceses to actually embrace remote work as a viable option. So stick with us. In this episode, we'll share our experiences and our honest advice so you're equipped to determine whether remote work could actually work for you. Hey there, and welcome to the newest episode of the eCatholic Vlogcast, where we are on a mission to reverse the trend of not-so-great Catholic communication. I'm your host, Matthew Kurtz, joined by Joe Garcia. So the Vlogcast is a remotely produced production, and so today my kids happen to be home, so full disclosure, you might hear some screaming kids in the background. Hopefully they're screams of joy and not screams of sibling rivalry, but hey, it's par for the course when you're working from home.
And I've got a little dog, Lucy, with some really big vocals. She's a beagle, so if you hear her in the background today, we're just going to roll with it.
Yeah, I've been in plenty of meetings where you hear faint sounds of Lucy howling in the background, so there'd be a nice touch to the Vlogcast today. Today we're going to explore the question, should you allow your employees to work remotely? And I just want to get two things very clear right off the bat. We are not saying that the traditional office is evil. And we are not saying that remote work is the cure-all for all of the problems of church organizations and workplace situations that you might find there. So like I said, the goal of this episode is just to help you explore the possibility, to open up your mind to the possibility of whether you could actually benefit from having people work remotely for your company. And we're going to give you some things to think about on that topic.
Absolutely. And some of the travels that I have around the country working with different parishes and Catholic organizations, a lot of them just seem so intrigued by the idea of remote work, but just really, quite frankly, have no idea where to start or where even to begin for that. And so that's one of the big things that we want to try to do today is just say, hey, here's some things to think about. Here's some things that you can do and some tangible steps to try it out and hopefully set yourself up for success if it is something you want to move towards, or if it's something you don't have to go all or nothing. You could even have a hybrid approach. So a couple things you want to be upfront about right away. Point number one, not all organizations are compatible or a good fit for remote work. For example, my wife is a teacher. Schools probably aren't going to have that great of success if all their teachers work remotely Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 and the kids are left to rule the roost. So keep that in mind. Places like diocesan organizations or Catholic ministries, if you have communication or directors or different things like that where maybe you don't have people in all the time, those may be a lot better fit for those types of remote work opportunities.
Yeah, I actually used to be the director of communications for a diocese, and I would have tons of drive-by meetings that could really derail my day. You know, I had a newspaper deadline to hit, and a priest would just happen to be in town. He'd stop in the office, and my office was right by the front door, so they'd stop by all the time. And it was great to chat and be available for them, but sometimes it could really derail my day and get me out of a deep work mode when I was really getting something done. And so that's an example of I think there could have been times where it would be beneficial to have some time, to protect some time during the week and do some remote deep work for my job. So the second point is remote work doesn't need to be an all or nothing deal. Okay, so once you've identified certain roles that are actually compatible with remote work at your organization, do a trial run, test it out. So try 1 or 2 days a week, maybe this summer or maybe during the holidays, just to see how it works. And then once your trial run is done, get everybody together and be observant during that process, and then discuss and be honest with yourself. What worked, what didn't? Is it something that we could possibly continue moving into the future?
Yeah, one example is when I first started at eCatholic back in 2013, I was actually living in Amarillo, Texas. I worked remotely for a handful of months before my wife and we got married, and then we moved down to College Station the following summer. And then we were in this traditional office environment from that point forward. And then we hired Matthew Kurtz in 2014. But he was in Bismarck and had no desire to relocate back to Texas. And so we had to try to figure this remote work thing out kind of on the fly. It was like the first true test of it, really, with collaboration and those sorts of things. Kind of fast forward to 2018, we just closed down our College Station office where we had kind of our last two developers there. And now we're 100% remote work remote work employer, essentially, and company. And what's nice about that is it happened over the course of several years. It wasn't something that happened overnight or right away or in a week or a month. So just realize very clear, very upfront, that it's something that could take time if that's something that you're working or striving to do. But there's nothing that says, like I said earlier, that you have to be a 100 all in or nothing sort of thing. There's some great hybrid approaches that I think could work very well. Kind of leads me into what works well, what doesn't. And so one of the things we want to do is talk about the advantages and disadvantages of remote work. So what I'd recommend is do it for a trial period. Pick a day a week or so that you want to try this. So here are some things to maybe consider as far as advantages go. The first one is increased productivity. Like Matthew said, you can have a lot of drive-by meetings if you're in a physical office environment. And so what's nice about remote work is if it's a day a week or 2 days a week, you're not going to have those constant interruptions if you have a nice controlled environment for you to work in, where you can really just put your head down, get into the grind, and just kind of knock out work without, those interruptions, and you have the ability to control distractions as you continue to do that.
Yeah, I've noticed if you're talking to somebody who is kind of resistant to remote work, they really kind of balk at the fact that you say you get increased productivity when you work from home. They're like, don't you have kids at home? And don't you have a spouse at home that just interrupt you all the time? And we actually list the whole family issue as a advantage to having a remote company. So we found that we're a Catholic company. We like to support working families and family values, and that having employees that are working from home helps the employees be more connected with their families and more present to their families. Not all the time. Obviously, work is still important. You can't constantly be with your kids, but it's just help foster some family connectedness. Like if I need to go help my wife out and pick up the kids one day, I can easily do that if my work schedule allows for it. And so I just want to encourage you to be realistic with that and also have clear expectations, because let's say you are working full time and you're the primary caretaker of your children. There's going to be some significant challenges that you'd have to overcome if that is the case. And so you need to make sure you're being realistic about that and about your own capabilities, the number of hours in a day, that it's hard to fully give yourself to your work if you're working full time and also be the caretaker of your children.
Sure. One great example is we have several part-time employees that work, 4 or 5 hours a day or so. But what's nice is they work from home and they take care of their kids during the day. So over the course of an entire day, they're getting their hours in when their kids are napping or early in the morning or later in the evening. And they're not customer facing, so they're not having to take calls between 8 and 5 all day, and it works great for them, lets them take care of their families, probably saves them on daycare, those sorts of things. So keep that in mind. It's just really nice for us to be able to do that for our employees. And like Matthew said, if you were full-time doing that, it may not work out quite as well. You'd probably need to figure out a better situation for that. But kind of another advantage, and I think this is one of the big ones here at eCatholic that really opened our eyes to remote work, is that it gives us access to the best talent. Not the best talent in this city or in this state, but just the best talent that we can find. So when we have job openings and applications are coming in, they're not just coming in from our local area where our headquarters is at. They're coming in from all across the country, and we're able to really open up that pool of talent that we draw from.
So now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some disadvantages, because there are disadvantages to remote work, and the key is just to be aware of them so that you can overcome them. The first one is just balancing work life versus personal life. So when you work from home, home is work and work is home, and the lines can get really blurred really quickly. And so we found that it's important to create an actual work schedule and stick to it. Now, if you're, like Joe said, if you're customer facing, you obviously need to have specific hours as your work schedule, 8 to 5 or whatever it might be. But we also have people on our team that aren't customer facing very much, and so they can have kind of different schedules as long as they still get their work done. A great example of this is our graphic designer, Amy. She works remotely from Vancouver, and she regularly works on nights and weekends just because that's what works for her family and for her schedule. Joe, I know, likes to get up at 5:30 a.m. and knock out tasks just because he's up and he's in the zone then. And so some days...
And it's quiet.
And it's quiet, exactly. And nobody's bugging him. I'm not bugging him at 5:30 in the morning. I'm still sleeping. And then some days, Joe will disappear around 3:30 a.m. because he needs a break, and he's been going at it since 5. And so just like we said, make a schedule, something that works for you, and stick to it. And I think our leadership really does a good job of leading by example on this topic, because they're demonstrating healthy working hours and moderation, and not chatting me at 9 p.m. expecting me to be online and doing something.
One disadvantage kind of tied to that personal level, Matthew, is just knowing yourself too. So in addition between from that organization to employee relationship, the advantages and disadvantages there, keep in mind the people. So I'm really extroverted, and it's really tough for me sometimes to work from home all week long. I do miss that human connection because there's not someone across the hall that if I just need a break or, want to go do something or go grab a bite to eat with somebody, that I can do that. So I have to actually make a conscious effort to schedule maybe longer lunch meetings or something with friends just to get out and have some adult interaction. So keep that in mind on that work personal life balance, because that's something that's going to be important as well.
Yeah, personally, I like to go out and exercise over the lunch hours just to get out of the office, get a different change in environment, and keep the day going and get that fix of some interpersonal reaction.
One of the other big disadvantages kind of tied into some of this is if you start it, there's this work from home stigma where people are maybe thinking, is Matthew really working? Or I don't see him online right now. What is he doing? Is he playing video games, or is he out? Did he spend 3 hours at the gym hanging out in the swimming pool because it was hot, or whatever the case was? But one of the things that you'll have to battle with is just personally on that level. I know early on, if you've never done it before, it is something you're like, oh, can I do this? Is this okay? Just keep that line of communication open. That's going to be key to making sure that this works. And then also from kind of the top down, as you get ready to maybe experiment with remote work, make sure that your employees know, hey, you're trusted and your work is going to speak for itself. Now, you're going to need to evaluate and do some other things to follow up on that. But keep in mind and make sure that people know that it's okay and that y'all are learning together. It's going to take them a while to kind of get their feet on the ground and get settled.
So another disadvantage that we've kind of touched on, and I've personally experienced with remote work, is just staying connected with your employees when you're all remote and collaborating effectively. So little known fact, I actually left eCatholic for a period of time because I was attracted to be back in that office environment because I'm more of an extrovert and I wanted to be around people like that. Because remote work can lead to a sense of loneliness, and you need to make sure that your employees aren't feeling disconnected from the mission of the entire team. And so I know after I left and eventually obviously came back, eCatholic made some changes to make sure that we were getting together as a team on a regular basis.
Absolutely. So we implemented what we call Team Week. We have our employees kind of come in once a week or once a year in the summer for an entire week, and we hang out and we do some team building activities, and we just work together and spend time together. It's also a great opportunity for new employees to meet the rest of the team in person. Sometimes we hire at the beginning of the year, and we may not actually meet, our new coworker or colleague for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And then also in December, we bring everyone and their spouse in, and we kind of just have a nice, fun Christmas party. It's just some nice team building things. And if you're a customer of eCatholic, you know that every summer you get an email from us saying, hey, we're basically taking a week to ourselves, and we might reply a little bit slower than normal, and that's okay. It's important because we want to make sure we're doing what we need to on our end to keep our employees happy and keep those bonds nice and tight. From a technical perspective, one of the hardest things after Matthew left, other than him leaving, was taking a hard look at ourselves and saying, hey, do we have the right systems in place to be successful for this remote work environment? And some of the things that we identified were, no, we didn't. We don't have the proper phone system in place so that we can accept incoming calls from customers and transfer them to someone in a different location. Or we didn't have the right phone system in place so that somebody from our sales team could call out from our eCatholic number without giving away their personal cell phone or home number. So some of the things that we use in regards to solve that are phone.com. Zoom Phone just came out. We just switched over to it, mostly because we're already using Zoom for other things, and it was just a nice, easy transition there. You also will hear of other pieces of software online called grasshopper.com or RingCentral. I'm not going to recommend one over the other. They're all unique based on your needs. So for instance, Zoom works great for us because we're 100% in on voice over IP running calls through our computer. Whereas if you need maybe a hybrid approach or you need physical desk phones at your home office or a physical office to transfer back and forth between locations, one of the other options like Grasshopper or RingCentral may be a better solution to support physical devices and actual landlines plus voice over IP. Having systems like this allow us to make sure that we're able to communicate effectively and get customers transferred over efficiently without it being burdensome on either party. Software number 2 that we use is called Asana. Not, hey, I'm going to the gym, going to hang out in the steam room, but Asana, it's a task management software. And that's what we use to make sure that we create projects. There's 100% full transparency there. We can see each other's work. We can assign tasks to each other. One of my favorite features in it is that I can make a task for Matthew, and maybe I have another task for myself, and I can make that dependent on whatever I assign to Matthew, so that when he wraps that up, I get an automatic notification knowing, hey, I have what I need now to keep moving forward. So that's fantastic and great. The other thing that's really nice about it is it's hard to hide in those software. Like if you're not doing your work and not completing your tasks, like everyone knows. And it's not just me, Matthew's boss, that knows. It's everyone on our team and everyone that he works with knowing he's not getting stuff done. So we do trust everyone, but at the same time, we have the right systems in place to keep that from kind of even being an issue. We all know what that's for.
Yeah, in every traditional office environment job that I've had, basically 90% of my day has been just working out of my email inbox, which can really, essentially, it forces you to just focus on the fires that constantly come up throughout the day. And having a task management software like Asana has been huge in helping us communicate more effectively and also collaborate on a remote basis. Because we've all been in email discussion threads and somebody disappears from the CC list, so they don't know what's going on. And then your email software truncates the messages, so you miss 3 of the messages. It just gets to be a pain. Having task management software like that helps us have conversations within the software itself without it takes email out of the equation, which has been huge for our efficiency as an organization.
I was going to say, it's just really nice that personally for us, we don't actually, I don't email our employees very often directly. We use Zoom chat or assign things to each other in notes in Asana. I just don't email them hardly ever throughout the year. Most of our email communications is just going back and forth directly with customers. And so that's how powerful these project management systems are. Some other examples real quick, just to give you an idea. Basecamp is one that's really popular. Another one that's really popular is Monday.com. They all have some great features. Excuse me. So take a look if that's something you're interested in. What's great about these pieces of software is a lot of them are free for 10 or under users or for nonprofits. And so you may have some really good tools at your fingertips that won't cost you any money.
2 other pieces of software that are essential to our remote work environments. First, video conferencing and screen sharing software. So we personally also use Zoom for that purpose. You've probably heard of GoToMeeting. That's another option. We used to use Google Hangouts. That's another option you could consider. We outgrew it for our needs. But basically, when we use Zoom, it allows for daily stand-up meetings internally as a team. We can set up groups and easily jump onto a call, be able to see each other and share our screens. But we can also have outward-facing meetings with clients. Usually set up a time that goes to their calendar, and then they get a link that they can use to join the meeting, and they can turn on their video and communicate with us that way as well. So that's been an important piece, is having video conferencing software that is seamless and pain-free. Another piece of software is just shared document software. This sort of area of software has come a long way in the last few years, and we personally use Google Drive and all of the apps that come with it. So Google Slides, Google Sheets, Google Docs, and all of that. And we actually just upgraded to Team Drive, which is a different feature within the Google Suite option. So there's other options in that area, but that's what's been working for us.
One of the things that I think is important as you implement these different pieces of software or consider them is remember that they have different levels of priority. So for us at eCatholic, we use Zoom for our chat, for video conferencing, and for our phone system. So one of the things that we said is, hey, we're going to set some rules for the software that we use. Basically, if I email you, I don't really expect a response between, 24 hours or so, somewhere within that time frame a day. If I assign a task to you in Asana, there's kind of an unwritten rule that everyone's checking that Asana project management system at least once in the morning, once in the evening as they're diving into deep work. And so what's nice about that is if I have something or I need I have the instinct to maybe walk across the hall in a traditional office environment. Well, we don't do that here at eCatholic. I'm not just going to go interrupt Matthew. It's going to force me to really think about how important is this? Is it something I need to think through more and ask the right questions? And what is the best medium to interrupt Matthew? Maybe if I'm waiting on something that needs to be done within the next 30 minutes and I just have to talk to Matthew, and he's the only person, he's like essentially a roadblock for this task, then I can chat him because it's very intrusive. It interrupts his day. But if it's just something that I don't need a response for because it's not maybe due till the end of the week, I can just assign that to him in Asana, and I know he'll get back to it, or at least leave a comment in the morning or the afternoon, and I can continue on with something else. So assign those priorities. It's something that is kind of unwritten here at eCatholic, but we did make it clear in different meetings, and we know that that's how we work, and it's going to be important to your workflow environment. We were talking about shared email. One of the things that we use here at eCatholic, and I think as you probably won't need it right away, but as you grow into it or venture out into having more of your employees work remotely, especially if you're interacting with customers outward facing, shared inboxes. We use a service called Help Scout. There's things like Zendesk and tons of them out there that are essentially help desk centers. What's nice about that is it allows our sales team to email from sales at eCatholic, and they're all able to reply to customers from their individual names. And so, Matthew, I know that you've covered sales before for Natalie Johnson when she's been out on vacation. Just kind of tell us how that worked for you and why that was important.
The beautiful thing about having a shared inbox like that is, so let's say with Natalie, she was on maternity leave. So I was able to cover her inbox, and I didn't need access to her personal email account. I could just jump into that shared inbox and seamlessly go in, be able to respond to customers, and also see a history of her conversations, her past conversations with customers and things like that. So it's a really easy way to make that happen, and especially if you have somebody leave your organization, or if you have somebody go on an extended leave. That way people can easily jump in and cover them, and it's not the nightmare that it usually would be in those situations.
Matthew, one of the things, I'll let you talk about it and maybe talk about maybe your biggest takeaway from the book is we require all of our new employees to read Remote Work, Office Not Required. It's a great book that we recommend at eCatholic, and it just kind of talks through some of those personal struggles that you'll have as a company or as an organization. And then also for employees, it'll talk about some of the things like I mentioned, like really struggling with just needing to be around people sometimes during the week and taking time to schedule things. So for me, that was the biggest takeaway, is just saying, hey, I need to dedicate time to get out of my house for a little bit throughout the week. So what was your biggest takeaway, Matthew?
I really liked how we read it as a team, and I liked how it just opened up the lines of communication about remote work and about the challenges that we were all actually facing and the benefits, but people were able to be honest with each other about the challenges. And so we want to have a conversation with you about this as well. So if you're watching the video on YouTube, let us know in the comments. Have you worked from home before? Have you worked remotely? Do you wish you could? What's worked well? What hasn't? Let's have a conversation, just because those conversations, it helped us as a team to hear what how everyone was doing with it, and also be aware of some of the challenges that we would be facing ourselves. So I encourage you all to have the conversation here so we can keep exploring the possibility of this to see if it could benefit Catholic organizations at all.
Some of my biggest takeaways, Matthew, real quick, as a kind of supervisor and executive team member, where you'll realize that different people struggle with different things. And so some employees were struggling with kind of that remote work stigma, just worrying all the time if we were wondering where they were at. And we're like, no, I never even think twice about it. Like, your work gets done. That's the last thing on my mind. Whereas other people really struggled with separating, I'm at home, but I need to transition into work mode. And so Luke Tristani, I know, hopefully he doesn't get mad at me for sharing this story. Luke has home and work slippers, and he just that's just kind of his mental, physical break to say, hey, I'm putting my work slippers on and I'm going to go to my desk now and kind of transitioning away. So everyone's different. I think it's fun. We're looking forward to hearing your conversations, maybe down in the comments or the threads below.
And again, just to make clear, we are not even advocating for remote work. We just want to open your mind to the possibility of whether you could benefit from remote work. It's not just the hip thing to do. There could be actual tangible benefits for your organization if you consider having remote work for you. So that is it for this episode of the eCatholic Vlogcast. If you haven't...
Wait, we forgot one important thing.
What did we forget?
No, that's okay. One thing I will say, if you're getting ready to implement remote work, again, it's one of those things where maybe you just don't know how to do it or you're interested in it. You will need to implement some of these pieces of software from the top down. Obviously, if you don't implement it with all of your employees, it would make it really hard for Matthew, Kurtz, and I to have video chats if we were on different platforms. You're going to introduce unnecessary hurdles. So make sure that you take the time and invest it. And if you have questions about that, leave those in the comments down below too. We're happy to help walk you through some of that. But I think it's a really important thing to mention, and sorry to interrupt you, but if you don't have that in place, you're kind of almost setting yourself up for disaster and for a really bad experience. And we don't want that for you either.
Yeah, you're right. Like we mentioned earlier, remote work itself isn't like an all or nothing thing, but you need to go all in on building this communication infrastructure, having the right pieces of software in place if you're going to do remote work in any sort of capacity at your organization. With that, we are done with this episode of the eCatholic Vlogcast. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell icon to get an email each time we release a new episode. If you're listening to the podcast version, hit the subscribe button so you stay on top of things. Thanks for joining us. We will catch you next time.